Good evening, and welcome to Casio's webinar series on equity in education. My name is Amy Chow, and I am Casio's National Training and Product Manager. As a longstanding member and supporter through scholarships of both the Benjamin Banneker Association and TOTUS, Casio is proud to partner with them in these important discussions. The title for tonight's webinar is Equity in Education, Mathematics, Let me back up. The title for tonight's webinar is Equity in Mathematics Education Requires a Systemic Approach, and we are honored to have Beatrice Moore-Luchin speaking tonight. For the sake of webinar quality, we are keeping everyone muted and all videos turned off, except for the presenter. If you have a question or comment, please type it in the chat panel and make sure to send it to everyone. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on Casio Education's YouTube channel and BBA's website. Also, a certificate of attendance will be available upon request. Before we begin the session, I would like to take some time to share some ways Casio is continuing to support education. Casio created the Casio Cares program to support educators, parents, and students during this time of remote learning. This program gives free access to our calculator emulator software through the end of December, free online training through the end of October, and numerous free activities and videos to help support your curriculum. Casio has always provided high quality and affordable technology for everyone. Most recently, we released our newest graphing calculator, the FX9750G3, and our free web-based dynamic mathematics software, ClassPad.net, to continue to address the technology access gap and support students, parents, and teachers. As part of the Casio Cares program, we have also extended free access to ClassPad.net's add-on functionality of AP Statistics and Computer Algebra System through the end of the year. To learn more about our Casio Cares program, calculators, and software, visit CasioEducation.com. And now, Dr. Crystal Morton from BBA will share their mission statement and introduce B. Crystal?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And Casio, thank you for working with the Benjamin Banneker Association in this partnership. The Benjamin Banneker Association is a national nonprofit dedicated to mathematics education advocacy, establishing a presence for leadership and professional development to support teachers and leveling the playing field for mathematics learning of the highest quality for African American students. Our vision is that all children, and particularly African American children, have access to the highest quality mathematics education that empowers them to gain the self-confidence, enthusiasm, and endurance needed to succeed in mathematics and to transform themselves in their communities. And this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing one of our current board members, our executive director, or former president of the Benjamin Banneker Association, Beatrice Moore-Luchin. She began her career in mathematics teaching in her hometown of San Antonio, Texas in 1980, with her first teaching assignment in Edgewood ISD. Since that time, she has expanded her experiences in the area of mathematics education beyond secondary mathematics teaching to include being a district supervisor, consultant, and mathematics coach. She has seamlessly integrated her Texas Lifetime Secondary Teacher Certificate certifications in the areas of mathematics, Spanish, and journalism into her work with various programs to support improved instruction with a focus on equity and providing support for underrepresented student populations. In addition to being the current executive director and a past president of the Benjamin Banneker Association, Beatrice Moore-Luchin has also served on the board of directors for NCTM and the Texas Association of Supervisors as well. She's done a host of other things. I did just want to end my introduction by saying she's also published multiple articles and books, and she has truly been committed to the Benjamin Banneker Association. So, B, I just want to publicly thank you for your support of the organization. And I turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Casio. And most of all, thank you, BBA, for allowing me to serve you as you have served the children of the United States and around the world. Well, I welcome everyone that is on the line with us tonight. And we've got a lot to cover. And we are going to do some chat rooms, so get ready. I'm going to not speak to you all night, but I have some talking for you to do because at the end of the day, I need you to walk away with something that you can use with your district, with your students, whatever your position is. So one of the things I want you to be mindful of as we go through tonight, this is all about equity, and every child out there really needs a chance and a champion, and that chance and that champion, it starts with you. And I just welcome you and thank you for being here. We want to really focus on some systemic issues tonight and really think about an education system that is going to promote full participation and inclusion of children of African descent and maximize their personal development. This is more than about education. This is about their personal development that's going to enable their ongoing participation and inclusion in society. So this goes far beyond school. And so that's one of the things that I want you to wrap your head around, that everything that we do with students, it has implications for the rest of their life. And so that's why this systemic issue and how do we address it through systemic approach is so important. Here are some suggestions that I have for you, and fortunately this is going to be recorded, so if you're frantically taking notes, that's fine, but if you miss anything, please watch the replay and be sure to share with other people. But one of the things that we want to do is really make sure that the system starts to de-emphasize remediation. We have hundreds of studies out there that show that remediation simply does not work. Students need to be challenged. There are so many students who have knowledge and understanding, but they're simply not challenged. They're bored. They may have some missing holes and gaps. Some students are being penalized because they have not yet memorized their multiplication facts. There is a lack of automaticity there, but that does not mean that they're not good problem solvers. And so we really have to get to the root cause of what is causing the disconnect with these students in the classroom. And many of these children are finding themselves in remedial coursework where they are not being challenged. They're just getting more and more of the same, and they give up. They're getting frustrated, just as the teachers are being frustrated. So that is the number one thing that I want you guys to consider as we think about tonight or discuss tonight. How do we change the system? And the system has got to think of what kinds of other approaches can we have beyond remediation. The second thing, establishment of norms and creating high expectations of students' abilities and capabilities. What are the norms for the classroom? What are the norms for the campus? Every classroom has a culture, every building has a culture, and the students create their ideas about learning based on what is the culture of the classroom, what is the culture of the school, what is the culture of the community. There is a culture that exists that students are really paying attention to, and many times they're adhering to that particular culture. So we must establish norms. District-wide, the system has to have some norms in place. And these norms are simply given the societal behaviors that are expected. Some students are not successful because they lack the social skills that are needed to be successful. Some of them are poor listeners because at home, maybe they had to buy for attention, and the way that I buy for attention and get attention, I've got to be the loud one in order to get the attention of everybody. So what are the norms? Where do they come from? And what are our norms? And help the children make that transition into what are the norms and expectations of the school so that they can be successful. Well, you have the other ones listed out here. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but they are here. I tried to type things out in a very straightforward manner so that you can see it and you know exactly what it means. But I really want for tonight to be the beginning of a discussion, not the discussion. So what are going to be your takeaways? What will you take back to where you are working and who you are working with? And again, you get to watch the replay and have discussions. And I would really suggest that get a team of people together from your district, your school, your campus, whatever organizational structure you have, and have discussions about this. So incentivize the use of a variety, there we go, of assessments to gauge student mastery of concepts and skills. Now, I am from the state of Texas, and we have high stakes testing, just like just about every one of the other 50 states that are out there. But we still have opportunities to use other kinds of assessments to get a big picture idea of what the students know and what they're able to do. And this is why formative assessment is so important, because we need to use that formative assessment or those formative assessment techniques, be aware of them and use them so that we can adjust instruction at the time when it is appropriate and possible for us to make a difference for our students. It is sometimes too late when you wait until the test to try to go back, and this is where all that remediation comes in. So we want to have a variety of assessments, and don't forget about formative assessments as being one of the most important ones. Gathering of data, very important, and to address disproportionate disciplinary referrals and unsatisfactory student performance. Review and revise parent support and involvement in the schools. Create community ambassadors. Your parents can be the ambassadors that are out there walking around and promoting the school. So many parents have a negative interaction with the school. They have had negative experiences with the school. Maybe they have had several children in the school. And so it's going to be very difficult for the school to be the one to try to talk to them, but they will listen to other parents. I have had the opportunity to work with schools where we created ambassadors, and I'm telling you, having other parents who live in the community come into the school every day and have the role of ambassador, not volunteer. I'm not here volunteering because I want to make sure that little Johnny or little Sally or little Keisha is okay. I want ambassadors. Many of these ambassadors that we enrolled were grandparents. Some of them did not have children in the school, and that was perfect because they were not just there because they were interested in their son or daughter or grandson or granddaughter, niece, nephew, etc. They were interested in children and in the community. And so we sought out and we got those ambassadors, and let me tell you, they made a big difference because they were the ones that could carry the word back out to the community about exactly what was going on in the school, and they had no prejudices, they had no hidden agenda. They were wanting to help. And also look for partner agencies that you can partner with that can help you perhaps with some financial aspects of getting the word out or some creative ideas, but it does mean a systemic change, All right, so systemic reform is needed, especially in the area of mathematics, and it requires all stakeholders. So I just gave you a list of some very specific things to do. Now I'm going to get into the stakeholders and probably go back and highlight some of the things that I've already walked you through. I can't get to all of them because we don't have 6 hours. However, we have enough time just to give you some key pieces of information. And again, the goal that I have is that, again, this is the beginning of a discussion, not the end. This is not the discussion. This is the beginning of the discussion. All right, so we have parents, community, teachers, and administrators. And of course, the student is really the linchpin that holds all of this together. But what are the things that I want to have happen with these stakeholders? I got to get them all involved. Well, of course, it starts for me with administrators, because as I work as a mathematics coach and as a math supervisor in 3 different districts, it was the building principal who really had the power to change things. And so one of the things that I strongly urge you to consider are equity protocol walkthroughs. Now, in every building, there is some type of walkthrough that is happening. I know we are now in a time where there's a lot of virtual learning, but at some point, we're going to go back to in-person instruction for the most part. And so there is this need for this equity walkthrough, this equity protocol. And so the observer, which typically tends to be either a curriculum coordinator or a math coach for the building, or the building principal or assistant principal, whoever is charged with doing the walkthroughs, would also conduct an equity walkthrough. It is not an evaluation tool. The focus is simply equitable practices in the classroom. So the observer is going to target specific students that are identified through data. Now, we have all kinds of data that we can use. One is disciplinary referrals. It's time for us to look at the data on Johnny and Susie. What are the disciplinary referrals? Do we have some kids that are disproportionately being sent to the office and have these high incidences? I need for administrators to go in laser focused on those kids, and let's look to see exactly what is taking place in that classroom with those students who have these high incidences of disciplinary referrals. It could be a student with high absenteeism. It could be groups of students who have been identified as at risk, whatever that means to you. But there are some specific things that you would be looking for and looking at based on some data that you have collected. Classroom discourse, the person who is doing the observation is going to look to see what kind of verbal interactions are happening between the teacher and the student and student to student. Okay, so let's think about this. Group work. Very much honored, very much required in many places. But the question is, does the teacher have strategies for managing the group? Does the teacher have strategies for making sure that every voice is heard? Does the teacher have strategies that are for accountability, that the work is not being done by one student, but all students are engaged? This is a systemic problem. There is a mandate or expectation that students are going to work in groups. Being in a group is more than just having a body with some other bodies. There are some rules and expectations, some norms that need to be in place in order for those groups to work effectively. Now, let's go back to the very beginning, guys. I am talking about something that is lifelong, that's going to benefit my students. Guess what? 21st century skills, if you ever look them up, if you haven't, look them up. 21st century skills that employers are looking for, one of them is that people that they employ, they must be able to work in groups. They must be able to collaborate. And where does it start? It starts in school. And so part of what I would like to see with an equity protocol that's going to change the system and put kids in the driver's seat, many of these students who are being left behind are natural born leaders. It's just that they're not using their leadership abilities in the right way. And through these protocols and these observations, we can gather some data and help the teacher to create other kinds of vehicles where the kids can communicate and have the kind of discourse that they need to have. So this is going to require that we go in with that in mind. So these teacher to student interactions and the student to student interactions must be observed, and once they are observed, then we've got to have some strategies in place that are going to help teachers. This is not about going in and I got you. This is about going in and saying, I see what's happening here. Let me help you. So physical movement and proximity. I've been in some classrooms where the teacher is kind of like way over here, the kids are way over there, and never the two come together. And that is a red flag for me, because some of these kids look at that because they read your body language and they say, you don't care about me. So there is a systemic issue that some teachers, not all teachers, but some teachers are not even aware of the fact that they don't go into close proximity with some of their students. So again, I'm going in and I have some data on certain groups of kids that are in these classes that I'm observing, and I'm watching the interaction. I'm going to tell you why we did this. why this is so important to me. We had a Hispanic student when I was working in Fort Worth, Texas as the K-8 supervisor, and I went over to Northside High School, which is one of the larger schools, serving a largely Latino Hispanic area, and we were each given a student schedule to follow. The young man whose schedule I had to follow, he didn't know this. He just, I guess at some point he says, this lady is in every class that I'm going to today. He never knew that I was there to shadow him. And I was there to shadow him and watch the interactions that he had with every one of his teachers, not just his math teacher. And the thing that in my notes, at the end of the day, it was shocking. What I saw was not one teacher ever came over to him, tapped him on the shoulder, or said anything to him, never called on him. He was invisible throughout the day. This is a systemic issue. How do you think that young man felt? How did you think that he felt excited about school? Did you think he felt included? Do you think he felt a part of? And so if he dropped out of school, I would not be surprised because he was invisible. So this whole idea about physical movement and proximity, it is important and it is real. And we have got to start to document it and look for it and then bring it to people's attention. I don't believe that there are teachers that are out there doing this intentionally. It can be unconsciously done. Maybe you get stuck on that side of the room and you never make it to the other side of the room. But that's why we have to go in with our eyes open and taking everything into account. So these equity walkthroughs really work, and they will bring some things up to the forefront that have probably never been even addressed because they went unnoticed. Questioning and engagement strategies is something else that we look for when we do these equity walkthroughs, and I would strongly suggest that this is something to take away from tonight's conversation about how to change the system, the systemic issues at a campus or within a district. So what are the questioning strategies that the teachers are employing? What are the engagement strategies that they are employing with the students? Do you have a large number of teachers who simply broadcast questions out and anybody who wants to answer answers? Well, if that is happening now, you're creating a culture in the classroom that is counterproductive. And what's going to happen is students get used to, oh, those kids over there answer all the questions all the time. So why bother? Maybe somebody has the answer, but they can't come up with it quick enough. They can't keep up with that 2 or 3 kid group that answers everything. So pretty soon, what you hear from teachers are things like this. Shh, be quiet, give somebody else a chance. Well, when you have to say give somebody else a chance, then that suggests to me that you don't have good strategies in place to really corral the students. Now, I don't want anybody to take this as I am not bashing teachers, but what I'm doing is asking you to look at some things that if you've gone into as many classrooms as I have gone into, you see patterns of these kinds of things. And once we see the pattern, now we got to problem solve because we're math teachers and that's what we do, we problem solve. So now that we have brought these issues up to bear, how do we address them? Because we have large numbers of students who are falling behind. At the Benjamin Banneker Association Incorporated, our focus is our African American students. You guys know the data from district to district, they are falling behind in large numbers. It is totally unsatisfactory. That's why you're on the line today, on the meeting today, and listening to the replay. So let's just push pause and let's think seriously about what are these specific strategies that we have in place to call on students, or do we need to stop and just say, you know what, let's come up with some strategies, and they are non-negotiable. We have at least 5 strategies that every teacher is going to use routinely, and they can use other strategies also, but we need some non-volunteer strategies in the classroom, guys. And so what are they going to be? Because we've got to boost student engagement, but because otherwise we have a systemic issue of students being non-participatory, and the system starts to fail the students because now it's up to the students to participate. And a long time ago, they checked out. So always we have to do a debrief with our teachers. And this is something that we make as positive as possible because, like I said, we're problem solvers. So I'm helping them. I'm the extra set of eyes or ears in the classroom. And I'm letting them know what I noticed. And this is not about, this is something wrong with you, but let me help you with what I saw. You know why? Because as you are a teacher, you're just trying to make it sometime from bell to bell. And that's it. And I am well aware of that. And so I'm that extra set of eyes or ears that are in there. So now that's enough for me. It's time for you guys to do something. I'm going to move you into a discussion shortly about the equity walkthrough. But one last thing I want to talk about is school leadership for equity. 3 different strategies: critical reflection, cultivate a common vision of what equity is, and then transforming the dialogue. Value the student voice. Again, on the replay, you'll be able to see all this, push pause, take screenshots, get good notes and things like that. But these are the 3 key strategies for school leadership in addition to that equity walkthrough. So I want to give you a minute to reflect, and I'm going to set my timer, and it's going to be exactly 1 minute. Okay, that's the teacher in me. I'm going to give you 1 minute to reflect, and what you're going to think about are these things. What are the perceived benefits of the equity protocol for all the stakeholders? What positive impacts could this protocol have on student engagement and decreased disciplinary actions or issues? What are your overall feelings regarding the concept of the equity protocol? You guys have 1 minute, and then we're going to move you into some breakout rooms. So you can pick one of these to start with, reflect, jot down some things, because you're going to move into a discussion, and your 1 minute starts now. Okay, so that's our 1 minute. We're going to move into breakout rooms. You will be randomly assigned. In your breakout rooms, you will have 4 minutes to discuss. In the breakout room, first thing I need for you guys to do is to identify a facilitator for your group who will keep the conversation moving. Make sure that every voice is heard. Set your timer. You will have 4 minutes in your breakout rooms once everyone shows up in the breakout room. Now, these are the things that you're going to discuss. Please stay on target, because when the breakout room time is over with and we come back together, guess what? I'm going to randomly call on maybe 2 or 3 of the facilitators for the breakout room to share 1 or 2 of your key takeaways or ideas that you had in the breakout room, and you will put that in the chat feature. Okay, so be ready. So I may say, oh, and this is another thing, remember what breakout room you're in. All right, so if I call on breakout room number 2, I will be waiting to see what that facilitator puts into the chat. So are we ready to move into the breakout rooms? And if you have any questions about your assignment, please say so in the chat. All right, and remember to use the chat as we go through. If you have any questions or comments, we welcome those, and someone is monitoring the chat room. So we are ready to move into the breakout rooms, and you guys have 4 minutes. So let me ask that someone from the facilitator from breakout room number 3.
Yeah, they're not all on yet. They're not all back
Oh,
yet.
okay.
So you might want to just wait a little bit.
Okay.
They had some time to get back,
Okay.
like 15 seconds. They'll all be back soon.
Yeah. And who is monitoring the chat?
Amy and I are. So
Okay. Great.
you can also open it and look as well.
Yeah. Has anything else come in? Because I have not been able to.
No, nothing's coming yet.
Okay. Are we all back yet?
I think we're pretty close to all back.
So the facilitators, let me tell you which rooms I want to hear from. Room number 1, number 3, and number 4. Let me hear from the facilitators in rooms 1, 3, and 4. And you can type into the chat whatever what were your greatest takeaways about this concept of the equity protocol? What do you see, what did your group members see as benefits? How could this support student engagement? How could it help to address disciplinary issues? So group 1, group 3, group 4, type into the chat. Your facilitator should have taken notes of what you guys wanted to share. And you have 1 minute to get that into the chat. And of course, anybody from any room can also put something in the chat. But I just really wanted to hear some group responses as well as just from anyone. So you have a minute and it starts now to get some things into the chat. We really appreciate it. We want to make this as interactive as possible in the virtual space. Okay, I see Lenny said you don't know your room. It doesn't matter. Just go ahead. If you have a comment, just go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay, thank you, Shelley. Benefits is that we may become aware of things we didn't know we were or were not doing. We can learn more about our students and not think of teaching as being colorblind. Yes, learn more about students' cultures from room 3. Thank you. Okay, that was my timer. Okay, so I did not hear from room 4 or room 1. And so thank you, Shelley, for representing. Okay, Michael, thank you. Daniel, thank you. Okay, you're thanking Shelley, yes. Okay, Michael, the more students are involved, the more they will care about their learning. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, we'll continue to monitor the chat. As we talk about these systemic issues and things that we can do, again, I started off with administrators because they are so vital to this conversation. As a district-wide math supervisor, one of the things I quickly found out was that I had very little power because if the principal was in the room when I did professional development and the principal took good notes and the principal would stop and ask me questions and then immediately turn it around and ask the teachers, do you see that this is something beneficial? If the teacher said yes, I've had principals that say, good, because I'm going to come in next week and look for it. And at the school where it worked out to be something that is just absolutely amazing was South Park Middle School. And the principal was so involved in every professional development. He took notes, and if he had to leave the room, he made sure that someone covered his spot until he got back. And he held his teachers accountable, and we went from 33% passing to 85% passing in 3 years with our state assessment. And it was a Title I school because that principal had that level of commitment that whatever training his teachers got, he was going to be in the room, and it made a difference. So I know how valuable our administrators are. So what can teachers do? Well, some of you may be familiar with leading indicators and lagging indicators. And here's an example from the world of business. A leading indicator is an indicator of performance that might predict future success. And a lagging indicator is an indicator based on past performance that measures how we may perform in the future. Now, when we look at a lot of our standardized test data, many people are using that data as a lagging indicator because it is past performance, and we're trying to indicate what the future is going to look like based on the past. And that really limits you as to what can be done. It is these leading indicators that are going to make the biggest difference. So I implore that our administrators and teachers get on the same page with some of this data that they are using. And the lagging indicator, there is a benefit to it, but it by itself is never enough. We must start to look at leading indicators. What indicators do we have of performance, how the kids are currently performing, that is going to predict what the future looks like? And so this is something, we don't have a lot of time to go deep into this, but leading versus lagging and make it balance out. So we want to put more emphasis on the leading indicators because this is something that we can really do something about. The lagging, it has already taken place. All we can do now is look at data. But the leading is giving us time to pivot and make changes. So I will leave that right there and ask that any administrators that are on board tonight or watching the replay start to consider what data can you collect that is a leading indicator that can help you make predictions about the future, and how will you use that to complement the lagging indicators that you already have. Instructional delivery is key. Our teachers must start to teach from a place of best practices that are research-based, and also a social justice curriculum. Now, with our Benjamin Banneker Association, we do have a position paper on social justice. Remember, our website is bbamath.org, and you can find our position paper with the media link, and you can read in detail what our position is. But this is coming straight from our position paper. So we are asking that if we want to change the systemic issues that are really impeding our African American students from being successful, we must really strongly consider implementing a social justice curriculum. We got to get these kids interested in math. And the social justice curriculum advocates self-love and knowledge. It advocates respect of the student and where the student is coming from. A social justice curriculum addresses issues of social injustice. And these are things that are very controversial, but guess what? It's going to get the students' attention, which is part of the battle. It is also an awareness opportunity and raising social action by the students. I myself was a student who was immersed in social justice and didn't even know it until I became an adult and started studying about social justice and equity issues. I had some fantastic teachers that taught us through real world phenomena that was happening around us. My 8th grade social studies teacher, Mrs. Stilwell in San Antonio, Texas, there was a vacant lot next to the school and it was a trash dump. And she said, it's a shame that you guys don't have a park in this neighborhood. And she got us on a letter writing campaign to our state and city officials. I got so excited when I got letters back from state legislature, state senators, and things like that. And lo and behold, guess what? That property next door to my old junior high school, it is now like a 25-acre park that is run by the city of San Antonio. And it all got started at Raleigh Junior High School when I was in the 8th grade. Okay, so there is power, and we want our kids to tap into the power that they have, but we have to teach them and show them how to do it. And that was my first foray into this whole idea of social justice and also being a community advocate. So it all started in the 8th grade. Who knew? But she was that kind of teacher, and we need some more teachers out there who are willing to do this. Issues of social injustice allow us to take the math curriculum beyond celebrating diversity. It is nothing wrong with celebrating diversity, but it cannot begin and end there. It's got to go beyond that. It should be an exploration on how the lack of the majority population's embracing of the diversity has differently impacted people of African descent. It is true, it is real, we have data that supports it. Students learn about the history of racism and systemic oppression, and the curriculum identifies specific mathematical concepts, skills, and tools, and applications that will allow thoughtful analysis by the students and also decision making, where students can learn there is power in mathematics because it will allow me to analyze data, to understand how I can use data to support ideas, positions, and really give me a sense of understanding about what is happening, because I am using that analytical side of my brain, and I'm really addressing something that interests me. We have food deserts, and there's so much data out there about how harmful it is if you live in an area with food deserts and the adverse effect on the health of the people in those areas. The abundance of fast food places in those areas. It is food that is cheap, but it is also food that is detrimental to your health. And so students can do some real data analysis with this and come up with decisions and positions and start to contact companies and tell them, we need you in this neighborhood with some fresh produce, or better yet, let's take some property. Let's find somebody to donate a patch of property so we can have a community garden. That's real impact. These are the kinds of things that are possible when we truly address the social injustices that our students are facing, and we use the tools that we have available in mathematics, science, social studies, and language arts to address those things. And you're going to get kids interested because they are going to finally see a connection between what I'm learning in school and how it can be applied, no, not just in the real world, but in my world, and how it can make a difference in my community. That's what this is all about. So our social justice paper can be found on our website, but we go into a lot more detail. But these are the kinds of things that teachers can do so that we have a systemic overall overhaul of what our kids are experiencing in their core subject areas. The result is not simply to mathematize the context, but to empower students to seriously deliberate cause and effect situations. If we have a food desert, what is the cause of it, and what is the effect? And now let's make a change if we see that it is something that is adversely impacting our community. Parents, of course, here are some ideas for parents or things that we can do to get our parents on board. We have to understand that working with our parents requires two-way communication. We have to have time, we have to be creative about this time, and be mindful of the fact that some parents are not showing up, not because they're not interested, they are working 2 and 3 jobs. And so we have got to be creative and inventive. The traditional things that worked when it was I guess what you want to call a traditional family, which I don't even know what that is. But the the expectation that at 6 o'clock everybody is home, and we're gonna give you time to eat dinner and then come to the school for the open house or the meeting. Some parents are not getting home until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, people. That just doesn't work. So we need to take inventory and get some data from our parents. What's your work day? What's a good time for you to meet? And things like that. We've got to step outside of the box. And one other thing, and I learned this in a marketing thing that I was in with a private company in Fort Worth, as they came into the schools to help us be more attractive to the community. They said, when you go to a business, where is the visitor parking? It's at the front. It's right by the front door. When you go to a school, all of the parking that is in the prime real estate right at the front door, where you should want your visitors to be able to park, a lot of that is assigned to the principal, to the secretary, to the assistant principal, blah, 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 blah. And so you are already creating a visual that says to the parents, all of these other people come before you. Now that might be minor, but that's major, because successful companies in the front, you don't see a space reserved for their CEO. They probably have a space in the back, and there's a back entrance that they can get in and out of. But at the school, it's the complete opposite. So these are the kinds of things, just these little simple nuances sometimes are letting parents know you're not that important. So we've got some systemic issues to overcome if we want parents to get on board and the community to get on board. Now, one last thing, because our time is nearly up. One thing I want to say about involving the community, community has to vote. You got to vote in every election. Bond money is needed. It is essential. It is crucial, because we have schools that are suffering. And many people, I'm not going to vote. I don't care what's going on at the school because I no longer have children in the school. No, you may not have children in the school, but the children who are in the school are going to affect the community around you. So it's about educating the community about a lot of things that are needed with the schools and how it affects the entire community long term. And one of the biggest things is that we end the school to prison pipeline, because it is real. It is real. I have some additional slides, and what I'm going to do, because this will be available through replay, I'm just going to hit these slides so they'll be up, so when you replay you'll see it. But these are the kinds of things we have to educate the community about, and if you feel uncomfortable doing it, it's okay, because guess what, you can get in contact with some people where this is their area of expertise. Changing the system requires involving all stakeholders. It requires getting out of your box of comfort and going into a place that you've never been before. The system needs to be fixed so that our children get the chance that they need. Again, I want to go through these slides just so that you will have them, so that you can have a discussion about them. Because these are the kinds of things I want the community that I work with to understand, because these are things that adversely impact our children and even their psyche about who they are. We have children right now that are afraid of dying, that have already been labeled, who even it is generational. And we have 1 in 100 African-American women are in prison based on 3 strikes and you're out. Many of the fathers are missing from the home. The data is real. And I want to communicate to the community, this is what our kids are up against. And so we've got to come together as a system, because there are disparities in incarceration, zero tolerance policies. While some people think it is a good thing, it has had a negative effect on our community. Therefore, it has had a negative effect on our children. It has had a negative effect because when these zero tolerance policies were implemented in law enforcement, it's like the schools followed right behind it. And so now we have a lot of school systems that implement these same type of policies, and children of color are negatively affected by it. And there is a cost to all of this. Great data right here. I would suggest that everybody just stop and pause and look at this. And this is very important. So I'm going to leave it right here. I thank Casio for sponsoring this. I thank Benjamin Banneker Association Incorporated for giving me the opportunity to serve. I thank the children for being there and teaching me every day that I work with kids, because I still make it my business to get in classrooms and work directly with children so that I have a deep understanding of what the teachers are dealing with, so I can be the problem solver and I have the time to do what it takes that they don't necessarily have the time to do. And I want to thank each person that is watching this live for taking out of your time today. And I want to thank each of you that is watching the replay, because this was important enough to you to either be here live or take time to watch it later. So I appreciate you. I thank you. And I hope you've gotten some ideas that can spur some additional action and some, not just reaction, but action. Because remember, tonight was the beginning of a discussion, not the discussion. So thank you, and be safe, be well. Casio, I turn it back over to you. Amy, thank you so much. And Karen, thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Bea.
Bea. Yes, thank you for giving us great ideas and actual things that we can take back into classrooms and start working on. So as Bea mentioned, this webinar has been recorded and will be available on Casio Education's YouTube channel tomorrow and on BBA's website. If you need a certificate of attendance, please respond to the follow-up email that will be sent out tomorrow. It will go to everyone, and it will include the link to the YouTube video. Thank you, Crystal and BBA, for partnering in this endeavor, and thank you to those of you who joined us this evening. We are continuing the conversation next week on October 20th on equity in education with Dr. Filiberto Barajas Lopez, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. Good night.